Good morning, good evening, wherever you are on this planet. This is Marc Gray from Normandy, based in Normandy, France, on DTV, Dimensions TV. I have the great pleasure and honor today to be hosting Sherry Swiney. Hi, Sherry. How are you?
I'm good, Mark. Thank you for inviting me.
And you're based out of what state? What state in the U.S.?
I'm in Kentucky in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Sherry, you're not very well known here yet on this side of the big pond, but you will be soon, hopefully after this interview. You as a young woman, you were plagued by dark side entities, and you were able to eliminate them from your life without help from psychologists or psychiatrists, and without taking any of their toxic drugs. Today, you're helping others learn how to do that, and what you did to free yourself. And your article and your method that we'll talk about tonight is called the That's a Lie program. I'm going to read one really short excerpt from your article on your blog that says, for those of you who hear voices or are consumed by strong and obsessive negative thoughts, it is critical that you understand that the voices and persistent negative thoughts that plague you are not yours. They come from outside of you and do not belong to you. They're not hallucinations, and you're not crazy. They are energy parasites and must turn your energy negative in order to utilize it as food. Their survival depends on draining and feeding off your negative energy. Sherry, you have a bachelor's degree in business. You've studied civil engineering in college for 2 years, and you've worked in the corporate world for over 30 some years now as a construction engineer and contracts manager on major construction projects across the United States. And your website is keyholejourney.com. You have given interviews on, and that's where I've seen you. I've come across your work on Freeman Fly TV and James Bartley's Cosmic Switchboard, and you've been working with Clark McClellan, former NASA engineer who witnessed I'm going to remind to my listeners, he witnessed Clark, a 9-foot-tall alien standing in a space shuttle. And you also have been working with your friend and colleague, Jerry Marzinsky, whom I discovered also on Freeman TV. Jerry Marzinsky is a mental health counselor who discovered that voices in your head are entities. And he also brings evidence of the presence of other worlds in schizophrenia. I have personally interviewed other researchers who mention demons, or at least in your minds, that demons exist, and those entities exist. Robert Stanley, whom you probably know because you have actually put up one of his interviews, at least on your website, I believe, who sees Enki as Lucifer as a mind parasite, Wayne Bush, Eve Lorgan, and Lotta Leon, among others that I've interviewed. And today we're going to explore your mind-opening concepts and identify, according to your experience and research, where those negative thoughts come from, and how to identify them and stop us from feeding the parasites and entities that tend to infect our minds. Let's start with early, maybe childhood programming and your own experience.
Yeah, my own experience is lumped in with everybody else's experiences on one level. It's extraordinary on another level. So let me talk about the part that affects everybody first. And so when we come into this world, from our minds from the age of 0 to 6 are in a functional state called the theta state. And that state is used by adults for meditation, but for a child who is age 0 to 6, it's kind of a hypnotic state. It's like a hypnagogic trance, in that the child takes in everything it sees and hears and experiences as just the way things are. So that's the truth, right? That goes into the subconscious, and that becomes the person's way of thinking. And as they grow up and they see what's going on around them from age 0 to 6, they're taking in all this stuff that's coming from other people. So that's the program that we all start out with, and every single person is different because every family situation and every childhood situation is different around the globe. You know, there's different cultures, there's different areas, even in the United States, you know, from the West Coast to the East Coast, from the North to the South. There are different cultures within the United States that believe differently. So the child who's raised in that family grows up believing what it has learned from others. It has no concept of self until it gets into the, you know, after age 7 to age 12 and on up, then it starts to develop a sense of self. But prior to that, it has no sense of self. So these are actually pre-programs that we receive as children. And so that's what we believe is true. So
as early childhood, you can clearly see little kids impersonate, follow the gestures, and follow the steps of what their parents and all the the surroundings around them are showing to them.
Yeah. Now see so that's what they believe. And then as we grow up, we find out that our subconscious mind is actually running about 95% of our lives. We don't know that, but that's how it's going. And we're only awake about 5% of the time. So, you know, we're only conscious about 5% of the time. So the dark side, which we'll get into how I figured that out and all of that stuff, but let's just take that as a given for now. The dark side knows how this works, and so the programming that we got as little children, and we don't know any better, that goes into our subconscious. That runs like a videotape recorder, and so you can't just change it by saying, I don't like this. I mean, you can have good intentions to change it, and so you can read a self-help book and then have the intent to take action, and then you find out that, you know, your life just remains the same. And that's because we're running on 95% subconscious, and we're not conscious of what our thoughts are. So we have to start, if we want to change the tape recording, we have to be conscious of it. Okay. So that's a big deal, and that can actually work. It's actually doable, but it takes consistency. It takes stubbornness. It takes repetitive, repeating the message to the subconscious until the subconscious begins to learn. And so that's where the That's a Lie program comes in so handily, because we get a glimpse of, geez, what I thought I knew, what I was told, isn't true. And that can be on any one thing at all. It can be big or small. But if you find out that there's something that you thought was true that it turns out not to be true, then that changes. That's a life-changing situation for a lot of people, right? So that is a good subconscious changer. Once you know that some of the stuff that you've learned is not true, well, then you have to ask, you know, well, how much other stuff do I think I know that's not true? And
Right.
It turns out that almost everything that you've ever learned is not true.
Right. Yeah, there was a book entitled "Everything You've Learned is not true" or something, by Lloyd Pye, whom I interviewed years ago before he passed away. I don't know if you remember that guy, but he wrote a book. I think the title was that "Everything You Learned Was False" or something.
Yeah,
And
everything you thought you knew is false or something like that. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Almost everything, actually, almost nothing you think you know, or your beliefs or your truths, are actually coming from firsthand experience. Think about that. Almost everything that you think is true is actually coming from something that you were told by someone else.
Right.
And so you assume that what is being told to you by authorities and by news media, third parties, is true, but you weren't there, so you're depending on what they told you to be true, and they certainly don't know either. And so it happens. I mean, you know, what happens when it turns out that these third parties are deliberately lying to you? They know they're lying to you, or they're withholding information, or they're falsifying or distorting information. So there's that side of it, but there's the innocent side of it of when we first come into this world. Our parents and our guardians are not maliciously feeding us wrong information, because they're going by the information that they received when they went through the 0 to 7 or 0 to 6-year-old portion of their lives. So, you know, they're just passing along the lies that they received that they think is true.
Until some of them wake up one day, someday.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And there's a lot of authors out there that have written books on this stuff. And so, you know, I'm not talking about something new. This is rather old information. It's just not really widely known. You know, it's not a worldwide knowing thing, which it needs to be. You know, so there's a tremendous amount of people that are talking about this. More and more people are talking about this, which I think is great.
Right, and you mentioned on your website that cellular biologist Bruce Lipton talks a lot about this.
Yes, he does talk a lot about this, and I encourage anyone to go listen to his lectures on the biology of belief. Is one of his books, and it's a fantastic book. You know, how our biology can actually change according to our belief system.
And I also like the quote that you put up about our fundamental beliefs, based on the Jesuits that would say, well, it's paraphrased, but the Jesuits would say, "Give me a child until it is 6 or 7, and it will belong to the church for the rest of his life." So, knowing the well, we have evidence today that the Jesuits have always been somehow conspiring, more or less in the shadow, but now, you know, they're in the Vatican pretty much in the open. And in Jesuit education has been rampant worldwide for some political figures, and some of them in the limelight, and others in the shadow. But you know, they do have a lot of pawns in the system, in the establishment.
Yeah, they do, and so I'm quite sure that many of those pawns in the system were with them from an early age, and so they got the programming. They got it, you know, they got a different program than the average child gets in an average family, but still they got the program. And the first 6 years are critical to these people that want to program individuals. And so, you know, even the Germans thought the same. They knew the same thing. There's a book out called Ominous Parallels. It's an old book. I think it's in the 1970s or 80s, and it does a comparison between the covert programming and the overt programming that the United States does, pretty much for its population. So it overtly programs its population through media and commercials and, you know, that sort of thing, so that the general population is so programmed that it will continue programming itself. Whereas the covert programming is a much more intense situation. So, you know, where people get punished if they don't do certain things, and that programs people too. But there's the way the United States does it, and so, you know, people just program themselves. They're so far gone, and I'm talking about most people. You know, it's the few people who are waking up, and thank goodness there are more people waking up. But yeah,
well, there's programming in the Walt Disney cartoons as well, and movies. You know,
yes. Yes, and it's very subtle. Until you know it, then once you know it, you see how blatant it is. But until you know it, it's pretty subtle, and it's targeted to the young children, because they just take it in like a sponge, and they're in this hypnagogic state where they're not reasoning at all. They're just taking information in, and it becomes part of who they are, because it's a program that goes into the subconscious. And you know, we get some silly information, and then as we start to grow up, we realize, well, that can't be true, you know. But for the most part, the program is pretty well ingrained. So what happens is, a lot of this programming is negative programming, you know, like you're never going to amount to anything, you dumb, you know, so and so. You know, why can't you be more like your sister or your brother, or that kind of thing. You know, people are putting down these children, right? So that makes them insecure, and it makes them lose confidence and things like that. And that's a negative energy that they're unwittingly putting out. The dark side feeds off of negative energy. That's their food. And so they know how this pre-programming works, and they will milk that and try to enhance the negative emotions to get more food. You know, so they'll enhance the programming, the negative part of the programming, as much as possible to ramp up the negative feelings.
And you're talking about overall most of the population, human population. We're not talking about the, because I've done a few interviews on this topic, the children mind control rings, the trauma-based ritual abuse, children and so forth, because there's all kinds of, you know, this is like most of the children population out there that you're talking about.
Right. Now, this is what you're talking about is the MK Ultras and then the severe extreme mind control programs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's you know, sure, that's very effective, and that's usually based on you know, it used to be primarily based on trauma-based mind control, and now they're using chemicals, as I understand it, to control the brain. But there's other ways of you know, controlling the mind that are not what we're talking about. You know, there's now technology driven methods to control crowds and things like that. And then there's the mass illusions that are from the mainstream media that you know, can control people and public opinion and stir people up into wanting to go to war, or, you know, whatever suits the scheme of the day.
Yeah, this whole arsenal is very varied. I mean, it's diverse, from psychotronic, electromagnetic weapons. It's basically they serve as remote control of the human nervous system, and all the intel agencies are using that, connected with the media, connected with the education, the sexual rights for children and so forth. You know, it starts at an early age. Look, the children today are connected to the machine. You know, as early as possible, they're connected to their tablets and computers and cell phones. It has very negative effect, technologically speaking, on the brains. You know, on the nervous system. See,
this is also food for the entities that are, you know, just kind of gleaning off of they're benefiting from this technology. The technology doesn't mean that the entities are gone. They're there, and they're there to stay until we drive them off. And once we drive them off, you know, we may still be susceptible to the technology. I'm not sure. But I think that once we have the presence of mind to drive off the living entities, then I think we're at a different level of thinking and perceiving the world. And I don't think that the technology can then affect us. I can't prove that because I haven't had that experience, but that just seems logical to me.
Yes, tell us a little bit about your own experience that drove you to your conclusions today and your method.
Well, I was subject to some torture when I was a child. My father was enamored by the Japanese torture methods used in World War II, and he studied it. And so, as a child, I got to be his lab rat, I guess. And he wanted to test different methods and to see if they really worked the way that he had read about. So
Terrible.
very, 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 very terrible. In fact, during one of the processes, the pain and the fear and the anxiety was so bad that I ended up popping out of my body. I didn't do it on purpose. I just popped out of my body. This to me tells me, I didn't do this analyzing at the time, but later on, I realized it's just how powerful the mind really is. So I popped out of my body, and I ended up in this really nice place, and I felt no pain. I don't know what was going on with my physical body. I didn't really care because I didn't feel anything. And so when I came back, of course, I passed out, and then my father would nurse me back to health, and then tell me what a good participant I was and what a good girl I was, and so on. And then he would rock me to sleep, and I would feel safe. So it was such a dichotomy of severe evil and severe good, all coming from the same person. So it was a real confusing situation for my child mind, who was, this started when I was 3 and lasted until I was 6. And so, I took all this stuff in, and the message that I got was something like, well, if you want to be loved, first you have to let the person torture you. So you can imagine the relationships I had as a young woman. I mean, it was really a mess. So anyway, I didn't understand the voices or the demons at the time, but I do remember looking back, different ideas that came into my mind that sounded just like my thinking, except that they were things I would never think. And so as I got older, I wanted to know what was happening to me, because it wasn't anything I could talk to anybody about, because I instinctively knew that I would be called crazy and probably put in an institution and drugged to death or drugged into oblivion, and then I would just be a wasted person. So so then as I got older, I started studying the mind, the brain, to see how it worked. And that was real interesting, but it didn't give me any answers. It was just the mechanisms of how we thought it worked. And so
from the clinical mainstream standpoint, right?
Yeah, from the mainstream standpoint, because that's all I knew at the time. Mm-hmm. And I had to start somewhere, so I started there, and then it was real interesting study, but it didn't answer any questions at all that I had. And so as coincidence or serendipity would have it, I was already working as a construction engineer. And my boss came and told me, he said, we got a project that includes computer programmers writing this program for the client, and how would you like to learn computer programming? I said, sure. So during the course of learning computer programming, it dawned on me that, wait a minute, our brains kind of work like computer programs in that they can be programmed. And so then I wondered if I could reprogram my brain, is that possible? I could reprogram my own brain. And so I worked on that for a while and realized just how complicated that could be, because I didn't know the code. It's like a gazillion types of things going on in your brain, right? And so I figured I had to have something very, very simple that while I was being attacked and in the moment, it had to be something that I could remember to say or do. And so I need to back up a little bit, where I had previously learned that so much of what was going on in my head was not true at all. I mean, it was a lie. And then as I did some more studies and read some self-help books and things like that, I realized how much of my life was a lie. And I wanted to change that. I didn't know how to change it. But anyway, so the long story short is that I came up with this That's a Lie. I didn't call it the That's a Lie program at the time, but every time I had one of those thoughts that was not my thoughts, I would just say, that's a lie. And because that's what it was. I knew it was a lie. So I wasn't just saying it, I meant it. And then the thought would go away. I thought, oh, okay, so that's a good way to do it. And then I thought, okay, so if I keep saying that's a lie, and then I turn around and do something different, if I stop using that pathway long enough, maybe it'll atrophy and I won't be able to use it anymore. That was my theory. And the theory worked. It is true that, use it or lose it. If you don't use a particular part of your thought processes long enough, then you can't use it anymore. You can remember it, but that doesn't mean you can go back and use it again. Not by accident. You'd have to really work at it again, just like you worked at getting the new path going. So that's basically how the That's a Lie program works. You acknowledge that what the thoughts in your head are lies, and you'd say it over and over and over again every time a thought gets into your mind that is not your thought, or that's negative about yourself or somebody else. And you say that's a lie. And that is actually reprogramming that video recorder in the subconscious till you get to this point where it's an automatic thing. And you no longer have to monitor your own thoughts. In the beginning, you do have to monitor your own thoughts. Not in a paranoid schizophrenic way, but, in a normal, healthy way, you have to be conscious of what you're thinking.
So it takes years of practice, basically, since you've come up with this method over the years. I would say maybe decades, and you started with actually getting traumatized as a child. So that's what prompted you to solve this negative thought problem and interference, over your adult life.
Yes, I did. And you and others have asked, how did I come to the conclusion that these negative thoughts are actually negative beings or entities? And I don't know how I knew that. I just knew that these were not my thoughts. And I knew that there was nobody else around. So I knew about spirit, because I kind of remembered spirit as a real young child. I remember one time, I think I was about 3, and I rolled out of bed and sat on the floor, and I said, I don't want to do this again. Meaning I didn't want to do this life again, because I knew what I was in for. And I was too young to articulate it, but I knew it in my mind. And, so when these thoughts came into my head that were really, really nasty, dangerous thoughts that I would never think, much less do, I knew they were lies, and I knew they weren't mine. So they had to be from the spirit world, the negative spirit world. And it was later that I realized that they feed off of the negative energy, and Jerry came to the same conclusion with his patients.
Right. In the prison system across the U.S.,
Yes, he did. And so, in the prison system, that's a feeding ground for those entities, because everything is negative in there. There's nothing positive going on in there. So
right.
yeah, so that's where he learned that himself.
Right, right. And I wanted to go back to your experience of the OBE you did when your dad was torturing you at the age of 3, I believe. It reminds me of this SRA, satanic ritual abuse episodes where the kid is tortured and traumatized so much that he pulls out of his body, his etheric body, pulls out of his physical body so they can actually, through their rituals, invest it with demons. And that's actually what happens during those rituals.
Oh wow, yeah. Oh wow, that's awful.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't embedded with. Well, I don't think I was embedded with evil demons, but while I was out of my body, I think my whole experience was it was for mind control, and but it was primarily to satisfy the curiosity of my father for these experiments. I don't know why he was so enamored with that.
Wow.
Because my later years with him, well, I was taken away from him, of course, and put into an orphanage that was run by the Catholic Church, which is another whole story of torture and abuse. But the life that I had with him later on, after I got out of the orphanage, was very good. I mean, we went fishing, we went hunting. He taught me architecture. He taught me math. He didn't do any more of that torture stuff, and it was like it was never discussed. It wasn't like it didn't happen. It just wasn't discussed, and I didn't want to bring it up, and I guess he didn't want to bring it up either. So that's pretty strange. I think that's pretty strange.
Right, right, indeed, and actually, this quote I think I saw on Jerry's website or a Facebook page is the if they can control the narrative of your belief system, they can control you, and that's basically what they're doing since early childhood throughout social engineering as an adult. And actually, social engineering starts early, at early age. So it's a lifelong process, and we never know if we wake up from the dream until actually end this incarnation. And I've done a few shows with about NDEs and their near-death experiences, and some were very awkward and not the ones that you hear all the time. With Wayne Bush, he's done like over 25 years of research on this, and afterlife and OBEs and NDEs and so forth, and you really feel that we are, even though you say we are only 5% conscious, so we are awake sometimes and conscious and 95% subconscious, but we are living in a dream, which is closer to a nightmare than anything else, because this archonic-based, fear-based system feeds off of our sufferings and fear, and it's always about chaos and trauma control. So it's a loosh game and harvesting.
It is, and the thing is that it doesn't have to be that way. Right. Once we understand that the fear that we're going through is based on lies, then we no longer have anything to fear. Once we eliminate fear, then the dark side entities are going to work on some other negative energy that's maybe a lower level or a higher level, whichever, from fear, considering that fear is at the bottom, and then we go on up, so it's a higher level. So we've got anxiety. Okay, so let's build on anxiety. Let's build on worry. Let's build on anything at all that will make a person feel not positive. So those things are based on lies. If you stop and think about it, worry doesn't do anybody any good at all. It only hurts the person doing the worrying. And so being anxious about something is, I don't know, that being anxious can be a good thing too, you know, but being filled with anxiety is not a good thing at all. And so, you know, these are negative emotions that are enhanced through the lies that we hear in our head, not through audible voices, but through what seems to be our own thoughts. And it's not our thoughts. It's not coming from us. So if we can keep that in mind, that these thoughts are not coming from us, they don't belong to us, and we can send them back where they came from, or we can send them away with love. I mean, that works wonders. You just, you know, I send you love. And that sends them running. It does. It really does. Yeah.
Yes, it does work in some instances, in some cases, but not in all situations. It depends how far the parasite interference has gone into your mind, or the person's mind, or if she's affected by, you know, with I don't know, with drugs, or some kind of clinical treatment, or pathology, or you know, that's it doesn't always work, but you've had experiences where it did work for you, right? It broke basically some type of paralysis or parasitic interference, and love was the rebellion.
Yes, and love is the final answer. Now, that doesn't mean we get to that point right away, because, and I didn't get to that point right away either. But in the beginning, I used "that's a lie," and that was very true. If it was a negative thought about myself or somebody else, then it was a lie. As far as I was concerned, it was a programmed lie, and I called it out as such. And then the thought would go away. And then I would do something different.
Can you tell us a few examples of those negative thoughts, what they would say in your head, and you identify them as external to your own mind?
Yeah, okay, well, let me think. There's so many.
Right.
Yeah, let me think. Just a kind of a common one would be like, you get into an argument with somebody, okay, and then you split up and go your ways, and then you start having a rerun of that argument in your head, and so you know, you can think of, well, I could have said this. I wished I'd have said that. Geez, I wished I'd have said that. You know, if I could do it over again, I'd just say that, and that'll rerun through your mind a million times, and you can't go back and re-say it, right? And then the thought will come into your mind, well, you were right, the person was an absolute jerk, and they're not worth living, you know, they're just scum, and blah blah blah. And that's not true. That's not true. But that's the kind of thought that will come into your head, and or it'll be that you're the scum, you know, yourself is the scum for doing whatever you did. And none of that is true. I mean, people, even the worst of the worst, that's not all they are. That's not the worst. That's not everything that they are. You know, it's like, okay, so my dad is a good example. He was this guy who was pretty sick in the head to do this to his daughter. And yet he turned around to be a really good teacher and a good father as I got to be a teenager.
So he had various altars to himself, yeah. Basically. So
I guess that's what it was. Maybe that's what it was. He had different altars. And as a young girl, as a 3-year-old to 6-year-old, before I got taken away, his altar was to run these Japanese torture programs on me, and to see, you know, what was what with that. And so, but when I got out of the orphanage, and I don't know what he went through during that time, then, and I was like 13 when I got out of the orphanage. And so from then on, it was teaching me how to hunt, teaching me how to fish, teaching me how to walk through the woods quietly like the Indians did, you know, teaching me how to build a camp, teaching me how to build a campfire, teaching me how to do all kinds of self-sufficient things. And I loved it. And so, yeah, that was and teaching me math that was understandable and getting me to love math and getting me to love designs and things like that. So that's what kind of got me into engineering.
Right.
So
Right.
that's different, like a split personality. I don't know, but
I wonder if Dr. Mengele had children, and if he raised them.
Oh God, yes, it was. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, he was. I read a witness account of somebody in the American MK Ultra program that was tortured by Mengele, actually, after he was exfiltrated under a different name, and once the I think they faked they searched him all over, but there was this big Operation Paperclip at the end of World War II, and all the Nazi German scientists and some officers and some engineers were drained. Exfiltrated to the U.S. Which is called by Jim Mars, who's no longer with us, the Fourth Reich today, but I think he's not far from it, because the New World Order is based out of the U.S. So and they pretty much ruled the whole New World Order worldwide, and mind control is the major part of mass control. And we see we are in a gigantic harvesting farm of people under mind control. When you look at the media, you look at Hollywood propaganda, you look at the advertising world, the consumerism, the credit based society, and everything else with the banksters. You see a whole human cattle being misled and lied to, with politics and false pretense based wars that should have never happened. I think there hasn't been a justified war in our human history altogether. If you go back as far as maybe the first tribes or something, it's all illusion and lies, like you said. Tell us how you identify. Sometimes I heard you say you hear the negative thoughts say in your head "we" instead of "I."
Oh yeah. When I was hearing these thoughts, one time I said, "Who are you?"
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "We are you." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm not a we, I'm an I." And so, that means that you're not me. You're not me. But they will tell you, "We are you." So that means there's many of them. I don't know how many were in my head, but there were times when it felt like there were hundreds of thoughts jumbling around in my head. In fact, there was a time that I encountered one. I saw it, and I'll tell you the story if you want. I was running this human rights program, actually organization that was focusing on the prisons and the court systems in the United States. And so it was a huge human rights organization. It was worldwide, and at one point there was 3 million hits on my website in a month. So like the average was 1 million hits a month for, I don't know, a particular year. And so we were starting to gain momentum, and we were beginning to become something, a force to be reckoned with. And so at any rate, there was a group within the group that practiced Reiki. Do you know what Reiki is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, does your audience know what Reiki is?
Yes, they do, and they also know the dangers of some Reiki practitioners.
Okay. So the concept is that it's an energy healing mechanism for the pure at heart, right? So there was a group of us from around the world who, I think there was 5 or 6 of us, who practiced Reiki, And we had the idea one day to what would happen if we gathered together in our etheric way, in our etheric state, and we focused on one prison in the United States to see if we could change the energy from negative to positive, even the slightest bit. See if we could have an effect by sending Reiki to that prison. So we had to find a prison. The prisons that we chose had to have a participant inside the prison to know that this was going on, and to kind of pay attention and notice and let us know what he observed, right? So that was the criteria. So we started doing that, and we started having some pretty positive results. They were noticeable, where the guards were more polite. There was fewer fights. There was, it was not still, it wasn't still nice in there, but it was less violent.
Hostile and violent, right?
Yeah. So, and it was noticeable. So we thought, well, this is great. So what we want to do is train other people to join us to do this. And so we were doing this once a week. And so anyway, this one night we gathered, and I was in my apartment and had the lights turned down and the candles lit and so on like that, and had my computer going, so we were connected. And we started the Reiki session to this one prison, and all of a sudden I got this huge force of energy down on me. It felt like it was noticeable, something I could feel. And then my computer went down, my electricity went out, and my phone went out, but I didn't know it because I was going by candlelight. So, so I went to call one of the team members that was in the United States, and that's when I learned that my phones were out. So that was weird, and I didn't know if it was just my apartment or if it was the block or the city or what it was. Anyway, so then I heard this this thought in my mind. It was almost audible, that said, "Those prisons are mine." And I was freaked out. I mean, I was pretty freaked out. I mean, my gosh, that was obviously didn't come from me. So,
right.
Yeah. So I don't remember how it went exactly, but it was something like this. Me saying, "Well, okay, who are you? What are you?" And the thoughts were coming like, "Who do you think you are? You have no power here." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're wrong. I'm the one with the power. You're the one that doesn't have the power." So we had this kind of argument thing going on. I was afraid, but I was still being bold anyway. So I wasn't that afraid. I can't even say I was afraid. I can say that I was nervous, I guess, a little on edge, and because I knew what it was, so I knew it had no power, and because of what I'd been practicing for so long, I'd already gotten, if it had happened earlier, before I was healed, I probably would have fallen apart with fear or something, but I was already over that, so I already knew my own power. I knew that they had no power of their own. And still, when this happened, it took me back, took me aback. And so I backed up I was on the floor, and I kind of backed up to where I was sitting my back up against the couch. And then, so we had this argument about who had the power. And I told it that, you have no power of your own. So you need to just leave. Well, then it turned into this, I can describe it as a dark cloud or a smoky kind of a swirly thing that was going around, sort of like a very slow moving tornado, but it was kind of like a dark cloud. It was darker than the darkness of the room. It wasn't black, but it was really, really dark.
At that time, you were in a conscious state. You were totally
I was in a conscious state, a conscious awake state. I had no drugs in me whatsoever. I had just done a Reiki session. So I was pretty well spiritually in tune. And this thing started coming toward me. And I just said, you know, I send, no, was it? I remember. I said, you know, I don't remember my exact words, but I started laughing at it because the things it was saying to me was pretty stupid. And so it reminded me of a Monty Python skit. And it just made me laugh. And so I started laughing and it vanished. So I thought, okay, well, laughter makes it go away. That's great. So it came back again and I laughed at it again and it didn't go away. So then I said, okay, I send you love. And it vanished and never came back. Wow. So, and then my lights came on, my computer came on. So this was very, very strange. I mean, it's the only time anything like that has ever happened to me, but it was tangible. It was definitely tangible. I wish there was somebody there to witness it, but there wasn't, you know.
Yeah, it was something almost material that materialized in front of you.
It was. It really was. And so, you know, that's, I don't know. Jerry talks about some of his patients seeing shadow people, and this wasn't really like the shadow people. This was more of just a dark, smoky cylinder type of thing swirling around. And so, you know, but it could have been ominous if I'd had the fear in me, but I didn't.
Right. Yes, you have to just delete. I mean, take away the fear, you know, of the because they try to put fear in your mind, and that's when you put your guard down and you can't get rid of it right away.
Yeah, the truth is, there's really nothing to fear. I mean, people are afraid to die. Right. There's no reason to be afraid to die because we don't really die. Our bodies might dissipate and, you know, die, but our beings don't die. Who we are doesn't die. You know, because we really are spiritual beings in these physical bodies. And if we actually could say that and understand that that's true, then the fear of dying would just vanish. You know, people are so afraid to die, and they will do anything to, you know, they'll sell their souls to keep from dying. And that's just a misinformation. That's wrong information that they were programmed with. Right. It goes along with that's a lie. So it does.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. But, you know, like Bush says, and we talked about that in a couple of interviews, he thinks our souls are programmed to go to the moon and sun at death and to be recycled as energy. So they basically, some people who become conscious that there's an artificial program, almost holographic afterwards in the false or fake tunnel of light with screen memories and so forth, because we talked about that. He talks about it a lot. He's one of very few that talks about it, about the reincarnation trap, and the lords of karma are actually waiting. It's a technology, and people who are conscious are not afraid to die. They're just afraid to be forced to reincarnate here. That's in the program and recycled.
You know, I've heard, I haven't read his book, but I read another book called The Alien Interview. And it's a book written by McDonald. Let's see.
The nurse, you mean?
Yeah, that's the nurse that dictated.
Well.
Yeah, okay, so now I know that that it was called a hoax by Project Camelot, but in reading the book, it coincides with what Wayne Bush is saying. It really does. And so this isn't the only document, but I remember when I read that, I thought, man, I don't want to get stuck. I mean, heck no, I don't want to get stuck. And so, but it also talked about how to free yourself. So
Right.
I don't know if Wayne Bush talks about that or not.
Yes. Yes, he does. He talks about the intention of going somewhere, wherever we want to go by sheer intention, and that's the intention. Is just the strength of your intention is really what's going to make a difference.
Yeah, and see, we're talking about out of body experiences, and so I went to the Monroe Institute
Mm-hmm.
and spent 6 days there, and I learned an awful lot. Plus, I also confirmed that I was actually traveling out of body, and that it wasn't some kind of imagination or anything like that. So that was kind of an experiment for myself, kind of to test the reality of it, and so. In the meantime, there's a guy that is associated with the Monroe Institute. His name is William Bullman, and he talks about when you're on your deathbed, and you know that it's your time to go. Then you can say, to my higher self, and go to your higher self, and so that will break whatever bonds there are for the reincarnation part. So I'm going to try that, when it's my time, because, as long as I'm conscious enough to be able to do that. But in the meantime, I've got the intention to do that, even if I'm not conscious enough to do it. So I think that would still work. So,
Right.
yeah, so I mean, there's Rudolf Steiner talks about how when we first arrived here on the planet, we were actually in spirit form. We weren't in solid human form yet.
Mm-hmm.
And he's some of his lectures are on that. I don't know if you've listened to his lectures, but they're fascinating.
Are we? Let's talk about the entities that you think are behind this. And I know I sent you the interview about reversal speech.
Yeah.
And speech reversals show some words, some sentences in reverse that means something, or very, they come back. Some words come back a lot, and expressions come back a lot, and archetypes that are rather negative come back a lot in reversal speech. So
yeah, and I don't know if that is conjuring up what's in the subconscious mind or in the spirit mind, or how the mind is being influenced by the dark side. I really don't know what that is.
Right. And yes, of course. Yeah, you mentioned the guy who studied that for years, who's very famous. I forgot his name again.
Oates, I think it's
David
right.
Oates. David Oates.
David Oates.
Right. And but it's really it's really fascinating, because we can see that the words are being spelled to our minds, and we can be under the spell of the words and reversal words,
Yeah. David Oates did some reverse speech on some politicians.
Mm-hmm.
This was, I think, last year, and I listened to some of them, and they were pretty fascinating. He did some on Obama, and he did some on Trump, and he did some, I don't know if he did any on Clinton or not, but he did some on other nefarious people in the White House. And so they were giving speeches of some sort, and then the reverse speech part of what was recorded were, some of them were talking about Satan, and it was clear as a bell.
Right.
And some of them were talking about, their real feelings about the audience rather than what they were saying. So that just, that I have no idea where that's coming from. I mean, is that part of the subconscious mind that's been programmed to believe contrary to what they're saying? I mean, these people are psychopaths, and so they have no emotion. They have no feelings. They couldn't care less what people are going through.
But reversal speech, or I mean, the same patterns go on with everybody, not only the psychopaths that run this world
Yeah.
and politicians. I mean, I invite the listeners to watch our interview with Wayne Bush about speech reversals. I mean, we've reversed songs, movies, interviews, and you know, there's some very relevant song reversals and speech reversals. That's a common phenomenon found in everyday conversation, as the subconscious or conscious mind is tapping into the collective consciousness, and sometimes communicates when emotional or passionate, either a message pertaining to the subject that's being discussed. It needs to be charged emotionally, you know, and it's not every word, and it's not, you know, all the time. It's every, I don't know, 30 words or 15 or 20 words.
Yeah.
It's something that's happening a lot in our everyday conversation, but we just don't know about it. And there are a lot of words like loosh games, fishnet, Satan, like you said, and archons, and many, you know, many words come back a lot. So I invite you to watch the interview, because it's very it's fascinating. And we, like you said, we don't know if it comes from the subconscious of the person who's being recorded, but I mean, it's recorded. I mean, it's coming from all horizons and all circles of entertainment, or even documentaries, or, you know, songs. I mean, it comes from anywhere, so it's not
Yeah.
really specific to any industry or specific characters, or people, you know, or famous people or anything like that.
It seems to reveal the true thoughts from the person's spirit, and so, but they're not all negative either.
Right.
You know, I mean, I've heard some positive reverse speeches too. So, um, you know, some of the ones that came from early Trump before he was elected were all, well, all of the reverse speeches were confirming what he said in the forward speech. So that gave you to think that he actually meant what he said when he said it. So what happened to him once he got in office? You know, that's a mystery. I mean, that's a real mystery, because even the best of us who are, you know, pretty savvy in the world and in politics thought that, oh, wow, so here's this guy who actually means what he's saying, you know, so.
You know, there's some programmed actors who are actually convinced of what they're saying, so they're going to mean what they're saying, but it's a program. It's a mind programming. So it's nothing different. I mean, I don't know any high-ranked politicians that have a worldwide audience that are not liars. So, you know.
Yeah, well, me either. And so that was a big surprise. I mean, you expect the politicians to lie, and so when you hear the reverse speech of these politicians, and they're, you know, they're all lying, it confirms that they're lying. And then when I listened to the recordings that David Oates did of Trump, this was before he was elected now, while he was still on his campaign trail, that some of the stuff he said, and then the reverse speech was confirming that that's what he meant, you know, whereas the other ones were, the other politicians were outright lying to the public, and you could tell it from the reverse speech. So that was really, really interesting stuff. And so, you know, I don't know what happened to him once he got in office. I have my theories, but I don't know how true they are. I mean, now I'm questioning my own theories, you know, about what happened to him.
Yeah, well, you know, politics is about bloodlines and ties from the ancient times of the ancient archonic rulers or their representatives here on Earth. So, I mean, there's so much research on that. You know, it goes back really way back in our human history. I wanted to ask you, because Jerry Marzinsky talked about entities crawling up the wall behind one of his patients at a jail. You know, so it did materialize, but he wasn't able to see it, but he heard it crawl up the wall.
Exactly. So this tells me, and it tells Jerry finally, that these things are actual external entities. And in the studies that he did, and the studies that he worked with Wilson Van Dusen, they both came to the conclusion that these entities are conscious beings, And I already knew that they were conscious beings, and so now we have two top licensed psychologists who agree with that, you know, from their own experiences with their patients and otherwise. And so, unfortunately, Van Dusen's no longer with us, but Jerry has picked up on his work and carried it forward. And but yeah, so now Jerry had to, I mean, this was a big blow for him, because he did not want to believe that there was, you know, entities. He didn't want to believe in demons at all. He just didn't want to believe that. So that was a big stretch. And then finally, they, you know, showed him, here, well, okay, well, here we are. We're going to crackle up your walls and scare the you know what out of you. And yeah, so he finally had to give in and let the truth be, you know, guiding him. So yeah, that was a tough one.
Right. And what about yourself? What, besides this cloudy cylinder and dark shadowy cylinder that you saw, did you have other manifestations of evil spirits or entities around you, or you know, around your patients or clients?
I have in dreams, and so and I have encountered some dark, nasty entities during out-of-body experiences. So, but not in the physical, except for that one.
Right. I have a question from Eve Lorgan, whom I've interviewed here and somewhere else a couple of times. Mm-hmm. She says that, you know, your experiences are so very revealing about negative entity feeding and how we're programmed constantly and from very early on. But it's hard to undo deep programming from infancy or early childhood as an adult. Have you discovered ancestral programming, like specific stuff from other family ancestors?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. No, I haven't. I haven't discovered the ancestral properties, although there probably are some. But you're right that it is really, really difficult to undo all of the deep programming from childhood. And I'm still working on some of mine. I mean, there's more and more layers being peeled. It's like an unending onion. The deeper you go, the more there is to unpeel. But you just have to take each layer at a time and then work on it diligently. And you know, you kind of have to get obsessed with what you're doing to make those corrections, because they are very deeply embedded. If you want to be free, you need to change your mind. So there's many, many ways to change your mind. This is one way that I found that works very well for those who are being constantly plagued with negative feelings and emotions, you know, that they just can't get out of. This is a very good way to do it. And there are other ways. There are other people who are teaching different methods. And, you know, so mine is not the only method. No, there's Dr. Dispenza, Joe Dispenza has several books out about changing your mind and changing your personality, and you know, something like the art of undoing who you are, or something like that. I forget the title of it, but yeah, so people can go look him up, and they can look up Bruce Lipton, and you know, there's many other people out there that are teaching different methods of how to actually physically change your mind, change your way of thinking. So mine isn't the only one, but it is really a difficult thing to undo that childhood programming. It is so deep, but it can be done. It definitely can be done.
Right. Have you noticed any aliens or UFOs in your experiences?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I have not.
Right. And among your, well, I would say patients and people that you've dealt with?
Well, I had one woman that I was working with who she sounded like she had been abducted. And I didn't want to approach her with that because I didn't want to put that into her mind. I wanted her to come up with it herself. But from the things that she was talking about, the dreams she was having, the experiences she was having, it sounded to me like she'd been abducted. I don't know, maybe I should have asked her if she thought maybe she'd been abducted or not. I just didn't know at the time.
Right. All right.
So that's the only one that I can think of.
Okay. All right. All right. And I was going to ask you about the projects that you're working on right now, and you're still working on the Venus project with Jack Fresco, or?
Yeah, Jack Fresco passed away last year. I think it was last year. He was at age 101.
Right.
And he started out when he was 14 years old, learning about how things work in our society. And so he became an architect and a society, I forget the name of it, but, a person who a social engineer.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so he did a lot of inventions that he sold to the medical industry and the airplane industry and stuff like that. So he was pretty famous that way. And he started up with his futuristic ideas of how the world could be, not how it should be, but how it could be. And the bottom line for the Venus Project is to develop a resource-based economy, which is using the resources of the planet to the benefit of everybody on the planet. And so there'd be no isms in this whole new way of thinking. And education's going to be the main key, because there's an awful lot of undoing, like we're talking about here, that we need to do, that everybody on the planet needs to do, so that we end up with people cooperating with each other rather than fighting each other. So, but the basic premise of the Venus Project is to develop a resource-based economy, and where it's a moneyless society, where there's no more money, because money is a construct that we developed way back when to control people. Just like religions are basically to control people. So money is a construct to control people. And you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have the resources, you have nothing. And when what Jacques Fresco noticed during the Depression in the 30s, because he was a young man then, was that there was still plenty of goods, but the people didn't have the money to buy those goods. So there wasn't a shortage of goods and supplies. There was just a shortage of money. And so that caused the Depression. And that, to him, was foolishness, and I think that is too. So right now, anybody can go to their website. They can either go to the Venus Project, type that in the search engine, or they can type in resource-based economy. They've got two websites, and kind of browse through them. They're actually looking for volunteers that are engineers, architects, dietitians, any kind of discipline in engineering, mechanical or electrical or civil, structural. If anybody wants to volunteer, please go to their site and read up on what they're doing. To me, it's a worthwhile organization to check out. So it's one of those concepts that I don't expect to actually happen full force in this generation, or maybe even the next generation, because there's so much to do. And there's so much education to be done. But what we're doing right now is we have what we call our first project, which is to design the resource-based management and this will be to, we'll have some buildings and some, we'll have some a museum that kind of educates people what the Venus Project is, and then we'll have the R&D buildings that will actually develop the technology that's going to be needed to build the first cities, that kind of thing.
So how was the Zeitgeist movement and the Venus Project connected at the beginning? Are they separated now, or
they're separated now, as far as I know. They separated some years back.
Okay.
I think they had an argument, or they didn't have an argument. They had a disagreement in philosophy, I guess, or methodology or something.
Right.
And so they kind of went their separate ways. That's a shame.
But don't you think, because Jacques was often associated with scientism, and he said science will solve everything. And do you think scientism has its own limits, such as like artificial intelligence, AI these days, and transhumans who want to actually own the human soul and trap it in some kind of organic robots, or merge the machine with spirit, and want to switch natural birthing through artificial incubator systems and some type of DNA banks and things like this, data banks. This is the world they want to design for us. But I know Jacques wasn't into that. But scientism and AI, and transhumanism, does it have any connections?
Well, let me just explain what AI means to the Venus Project anyway. This will be not necessarily AI, but robots that will take care of the mundane tasks that humans don't like to do, the repetitive tasks that humans don't like to do, the difficult, the dangerous tasks that humans don't like to do and shouldn't have to do. This will free them up to learn other things, to be re-educated or to be educated in the things that they like, that they're interested in, and if they don't have to pay for their basic needs, a roof over their head and food and water and, sustenance, then they can concentrate on learning what they want to learn and doing what they want to do in life. So the reality on this planet is that AI or robots are taking over more and more jobs anyway, right? So that's to be expected. Well, the Venus Project is going to do the same thing with, monitoring the environment, monitoring and tracking the resources on the planet, so that we know it would be in a huge database where what are these resources, so that we don't overdo the resources like we are today. And it's not going to say you can't have this and you can't, and this one can have this and this one. It's not going to dictate that. It's just going to track the information so that we can access it and see where we are on the planet. There's not going to be any, this is not controlling people. This is controlling and tracking the resources on the planet. And it's also, and that's a great thing for computers to do. I mean, they're really, really powerful at doing that. But so, and then as far as the workforce goes, the construction, the cleanup, we have an awful lot of cleanup to do on this planet, right? So,
right.
So why not have robots do that rather than people? So,
right. We need to stop polluting the planet to begin with, and cleaning it up.
Yes,
well.
and so there's we're looking into technologies for cleaning up, and there's an amazing amount of organizations out there that are doing the same thing, that are looking into how to clean up the planet. So
right.
The education part of it is that people need to understand that they need to stop polluting the planet. Well, the dark side doesn't want that. They don't want people to know that. And the dark side is in on every nook and cranny of our lives. People need to know this.
Yes, and of course, the average citizen is always pointed out, pointed the point. The system, the establishment points to him as the one who has to pay instead of the big industrial tycoons out there who are willing to show. So I mean, the electric car was the first car invented. And we're still running cars with fossil fuel. So it's all a hypocrisy game, and it doesn't look like it's going to change. It's going to be more oil wars or fake oil confrontations for oil resources, and it's a loop. It seems that the scenario has new actors, but it's the same. It's the same script, basically. So in order, like you said, to rewrite the script for ourselves and free our mind from those negative scripted scenarios who are like the Groundhog Day, it goes around in circles. And in our minds, we need to rewrite the script for ourselves. But if we don't have access to the keys of this whole society, which is social engineering, mass hypnosis, propaganda, and how can we, if we can change ourselves on a limited scale, let's say a critical mass of very few people, how is social pressure around us from the rest of society going to actually tip over to the positive side?
Well, here's my theory on that. The more people who become free, they're going to do one of two things to their neighbors. They're either going to scare them to death and they'll run away, or they're going to say, I want some of that too. And so, how did you do that? And so, if they're willing to do the work, they'll do it. They'll do it, and they will free themselves. If they're not willing to do the work, they're the ones that are going to die off. I hate to say that, but that's the truth. I mean, they're the ones who are not going to make it, because they'll get eaten up by the system, whatever system is left over by the time we grow out of this system. Because the more people that wake up, the more people that free themselves, and they realize what a farce this government is, whatever government on the planet is, what a farce it is to have money control our lives, what a farce it is to believe in the current education system that teaches nothing but lies, to spit these children out into the public who they have no clue, they have no education at all on the real history of the planet. In fact, we don't even know the real history of the planet. We're just now digging in and trying to find that out. But we've been lied to so much for thousands of years. It's not going to be an overnight switch. Some people would like to think that that's the way it's going to happen, but that's not reality. It took thousands of years to get to where we are now. And so anybody that thinks, well, there's going to be the flip of the switch or the savior's going to come and we're all going to change by tomorrow, that's baloney. That's really false information. So yeah, what's going to happen, in my opinion, is that more and more people are going to wake up and free themselves, and then more and more people will want some of that, and they'll learn, and then they'll have children, and they'll teach their children, and so on and so on. And pretty soon, we'll have a majority of people who look at the controllers and say, laugh. I mean, you got no power over us whatsoever. We are... you're the few and we are the many. That's just the way that is. So I think that's what's going to happen. A changed world may not happen for a few generations, but it's already starting. So I don't think that can be stopped unless we blow ourselves up out into oblivion. I don't think this is going to be stopped.
No, because they need to harvest the farm and the cattle, which is us conscious humans. So they still need to trigger our emotions or loosh to be able to feed off of it. So, but we have to starve them to begin with. But how many of us are conscious of what's going on? And the dark side is actually strengthening their censorship. They're strengthening their grid. altogether. I see a
And
lot of
notice that when they start using their, I guess you saw the news that Alex Jones has been shut down on YouTube and Twitter and I forget all of the social media. And
right. But
whether
Alex
you liked
Jones,
Alex Jones or not, it doesn't matter. It's the freedom of speech thing. So, but what that has done is it's made him more popular. It's backfired. It's made him more popular. So every time they do this, it makes the person more popular, and more people are interested in, well, okay, so what's this guy saying that they don't want us to hear? So these idiots want to shut down the speech of people that are saying whatever they believe. And people have a right to say whatever they truly believe. And so, well, you don't have to agree with it. If you don't agree with it, then don't listen. That's all there is to it. You don't have to shut them down. You don't have to burn them at the stake. You just have to walk away and don't pay attention to them. That's all. I mean, what idiocy is it that says, well, this person says this and I don't agree, and so now we have to shut them down? Well, who are you to do that? So yeah, every time they try to shut down somebody, it makes them more popular. So it just backfires on them.
Yes, but I'm not going to get into Alex Jones' role here because he's, some say he's a deceased actor. Forgot his name back from the '90s who is control opposition, and basically is just there's so much control opposition that it's not even funny. In France, there's so many. In the U.S., it's the same thing. They usually come from the system and are programmed by the system. And as the establishment rebels, they're not. They're just pawns of the establishment to make believe that there's actually a movement against them, and the real authentic don't get that much exposure worldwide as these guys do, like former NSA guy Edward Snowden. Whatever happened to him, WikiLeaks, Julian Assange. I mean, so much popularity and exposure to the public, and when you get into deep of who they are tied into, and where they come from, you see that there's a lot of dark points, and there's some things missing in their construct of opposition to the establishment, just like the dark web, just like everything is controlled by the military or the intel. So like Tom DeLonge in the ufology world, and he's CIA. So there's so many pawns out there who pretend they're actually defending the average citizens against the system, who are working for the system. In fact,
yeah,
so,
and I would argue that the information that they put out may be very good information, no matter who they're affiliated with, because they have to have nuggets of truth out there for us to think to other. So if we can grab those nuggets of truth and then wash away the obvious lies.
but it's difficult. It's difficult to discern. It's just like Corey Good and Randy Kramer, whom I interviewed. They're both agents and obey a military command, and they're supposed to be white hats from the secret space program, and which is supposed to be secret, but everybody knows about it now. So it's all bogus inversion, and it's inverted disinformation with lots of truth to it for the pitch, and that's how they grab onto their followers, just like all those UFO movements, New Age movements, the same thing. Over 1,000 schools out there since for the last 2 centuries, since Blavatsky, Crowley, and all those dark magicians out there, theosophy followers. I mean, are zillions, and this is the false light, basically. So we need to rely on our higher self, like you said, and this is the mantra that William Bullman was saying, and
yes, it is. And see, we're in a bathtub filled with lies.
Right.
And let's say we're in a bubble bath filled with lies, and then some of the bubbles are truth and most of them are lies. I mean, so yeah, it's difficult to discern, and I've had a tough time discerning myself. And so I just have to rely on what feels right anymore. I do the research and it's like, okay, so which are the reliable websites anymore? And I think that's part of the game that's being played, is to get us to the point where we don't know what to believe. Well, when we get to that point and we don't know what to believe, well, then we have to believe in ourselves. We have to believe, we have to go to our higher self and then, just use our common sense and realize that, look at this world from the 10,000 foot level, right? And see, that everything that people are being fed is a pack of lies. And we can't believe it. So that doesn't make it impossible to live on this planet. It's a beautiful planet. There's still some parts of it that are very pretty and very productive. And so, we can work with that for starters, and just hope that we spread the openness and the freedom to the point where it finally overrides the darkness. I mean, I don't know what else we can do except for something like that. I'm still really optimistic that we'll succeed, and I don't want to be pessimistic because I know the power of thought. So why not be optimistic about it and live my life according to that? And it doesn't mean I'm pretending that it doesn't exist, because I know that it's in the background, but I also know that because it's in the background, it has no power over me. And so if everybody knew that it actually has no power over you individually, the worst they can do is come and shoot you down. I mean, so what? I mean, you're not going to die.
Yeah, precisely, and I recommend your website. I mean, that page about myths we know and love. With the myths of everything in search of truth, about cholesterol, mental health myth, the voting myth, law and order myth.
Yeah.
On your page is great. Global warming myth, terrorism myth, which is the biggest one. False flag fear mongering is just rampant. Allopathic medicine myth and so forth. The war myth. I mean, you've gone through a whole bunch of myths, which are really interesting in discerning the truth, the higher truth. Because I don't know if you saw this X-File episode, season 11, about fake news and the Mandela effect, and this guy who spreads fake news in the episode that tells Mulder pretty soon, well, we'll have so much fake news out there that people won't even care about the truth, and that's where we may be going if the fake news syndrome and the Mandela effect being triggered by some type of technology on people's minds hits us so hard that we won't be able to discern any truth at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know who James Corbett is? He just recently put out a piece on all of the false flags since World War I think. It's really a good video. It's only 20 minutes or so. Mm-hmm. And so if anybody is wondering about how true what we're talking about is, that's a good place to go look. You can put James Corbett false flag in a search engine and see what you get. So yeah, that's a really good one. He just put that out a week ago, I think. Yeah, something like that.
And those beings, those entities that you're mentioning, I mean, they are mentioned in ancient writings, in ancient paintings, in caves, in the Nag Hammadi, and in many Gnostic writings and others around the world, and also those prime. I mean, the indigenous populations around the world, the Aborigines. I mean, everywhere in the world they talk about these entities, and the shamans also talk about those entities from the astral realms, I believe. And have you ever tried ayahuasca, for example, or with?
No, I haven't, and I don't think I want to. But Yeah, I don't think I want to, at least not right now. But
Right.
what I do know about these entities is that, you know, they'll target an individual who is particularly weak in spirit. And I feel sorry for that individual who then doesn't have the strength of spirit to fight against them, because the way to dismiss, you can't ignore the thoughts that come through your head, because that'll just make them louder. But the way to dismiss it is to recognize what they're saying as a lie, for the first thing, and then to deny it the battle that it wants, because it wants a battle between you and you, so that there's conflict, or between you and another person, so that there's conflict and negative energy. And then there's more food. It's a great big huge buffet for them. It's like yum yum. So they don't care about us. They don't hate us. I don't think they hate us. I think they look at us as a food source. You know, like a mosquito looks at us as a food source. They don't attack us because they hate us. They attack us because we smell good, you know. So some of us are, you know, smell good to them, and others don't, right? So, so it's the same thing with these dark entities. That's my theory on them. You know, maybe they are full of hate. I don't really think they are, but I know that they repel from the cosmic love energy, which is way different than the three-dimensional love that we humans experience between each other, you know, like motherly, fatherly, sisterly, brotherly, husband, spouse, you know, friendship, that kind of thing, that kind of love. That's different than what I'm talking about when I say send them love energy, because I'm talking about cosmic love. And that's a completely unconditional frequency. It's just a frequency. And that because we are frequency beings. And so that's, I think that's how the universe is operating, is on a frequency. And so the dark side entities are, some say they live in a different dimension. I think they actually live in a different frequency that we can't see. And they're in our plane, but they're not in our frequency. So we can't see them, we can't feel them, some of us can see them now and again. We can feel them, we can sense that they're present, but we can't sense them like we do a 3D person. So yeah, so that's their food. The energy, the negative energy, is their food. They cannot project it, they cannot produce it on their own. They have to get it from us. And the way they get it from us is to convince us to be have a negative emotion out of, you know, something based on complete lies. So if we can keep that in mind, every single time there's a negative thought about yourself or about another person, stop for a moment and say, that's a lie. And then see how your life starts to change.
Yeah, I think it starts with on an individual basis, because the occult meat and mind grinder that is actually running the show through secret societies, which are the relay with these entities on the other side, or on this frequency that is next to us. This is who is running the show on a collective basis and social basis, society basis. But individually, we can make a change for sure. But it's like being in a prison, and you ask a prisoner to feel different, you know, and think more positive about his own you know, outtake on life. But he's behind bars, and you know, he knows he's in prison. Once you become conscious, you know you're in prison, and you know you can probably get some relief temporarily, but you know, the prison always catches up to you. It's just, I always use this example of this Indian chief in South America. I forgot his name, you know, with the lip thing here. I mean, he was crying on TV because you know, the people who were cutting down trees and moved his own, you know, his own tribe deeper into the jungle, just to cut trees and you know, exploit the Amazon forest. So this is basically, you can hide as far as you want. You can actually try to get some relief inside yourself and cut yourself off of the rest of the world. But somehow, unfortunately, this mind grinding machine, which is this society and who runs society, unless we can change that, is going to catch up to most of us, you know, someday. So I don't know. I'm being optimistic on one hand, but you know, maybe on an individual basis, as far as the critical mass aspect of it, I'm not really sure it's going to shift, you know, all on you know, all by itself rapidly.
No, it's not going to shift all by itself, and it's certainly not going to shift rapidly. This is a slow-going process, because look at how long it took us to get to where we are right now. That was not an overnight deal either. And so we have grown in our consciousness quite a bit since my parents were kids, and there's more and more people who are aware consciously than ever before. Maybe not ever before we got taken over. And so let's look at like my parents' generation and their parents' generation. There weren't very many awakened people. And now there are more and more awakened people, thanks to the internet, actually, I think. You know, that the information is out there and it's available to more and more people. So people can listen to what we're talking about. They can think about it. They can discard it, or they can go for it. It's up to them. You know, it doesn't make any difference to me. It's just, you know, if people want to improve their lives, then they should probably pay attention and think about this stuff rather than just tossing it out without considering it. And then if they decide, no, this is just not for me, well, then fine. But this, I think you're right, that this is an individual thing. And the change is never going to come from the top down. It's going to come from the bottom up. And so when people realize that, you know, there's a great big huge pyramid, the top dogs are on the top of the pyramid, running the next tier down and the next tier down. And the very bottom tier, the foundation, is us propping the whole thing up. Well, what would happen if each of us walked away and got together with our own communities and did our own thing?
And boycott their system for a couple of days. Everything would crumble down. You know?
Oh, sure. They would definitely listen. It's like there's a power that people have called what I call pocketbook power. And so it's where we spend our money, because that's all these guys are interested in, is money and profits. So it's where we spend our money that tells them what we will buy. If we will only buy organic foods, well, guess what? There's going to be a plethora of organic foods. So if we start demanding that we want organic foods, I've done this in our local store here. And it took a couple of years of me talking, you know, to the managers and saying it loud enough that different customers would overhear. Not me that yelling or anything, just loud enough that different customers would overhear my requests and my statements. And the next thing I know, we're starting to get more organic foods in that grocery store. So, you know, that kind of stuff works. It's on a very individual level. It's on a very community level, but it does work and it does grow. So, you know, if we want to keep spending our money on junk foods and fast foods and things that make us sick, and then we want to keep spending our money on medicines that damage us, well, then that's what we're going to get.
And Big Pharma has been targeting people's minds. You know, not only in mental health institutes worldwide, people are, you know, consuming, are actually absorbing antidepressant, and this is the big psychopathic drug that has a big effect on a long-lasting effect on people's minds with
Yeah, I
weaknesses.
mean, they're drugging young children. I mean, come on.
Mm.
Just because a child is overactive, what we call overactive, was generally normal in my day, and you know, so the parents are talked into drugging them to calm them down. What is that? That's craziness, you know.
Right. And all this campaign about transgender being cool and this and that, and to break apart the family unit and go to some type of AI based hive-minded society, which is what I unfortunately foresee in political speeches here in France, but it's the same in the U.S., in England, and everywhere else. There's like a one world program that government program that is pushing this agenda, that is actually pushing us to our last resort as far as discernment. And maybe this is the triggering point where people will say, well, they're going too far in taking our civil liberties away.
Yeah, I think this is all part of Agenda 21 slash 2030, where the elite have decided what's good for the planet, right, and what's good for people on the planet. But first, they have to reduce the population to a manageable number. So there's lots of different ways to do that without being obvious. And there's the drugs, the pharmaceutical drugs. There's the poisonous food. There's the poisonous air, and there's just poisoning us in the water, and fluoride is keeping us calm enough to not notice, and that kind of stuff. It just so that's part of how they're doing it. Chemtrails is probably part of how they're doing it. So there's a number of different ways they're going to have wars to eliminate a bunch more people, and there's no reason for any war at all anywhere.
I agree.
End of story. End of story. There's no reason for any war anywhere. They're all conjured up. They're all, they're all for a particular reason and agenda that's part of the capital G game. So, and I think that that's part of this Agenda 21, 2030, to reduce the population mass and, make it more manageable. But meanwhile, we've got these groups of people that are doing really super good things, and they don't get in the news. But if you research them, it's uplifting to see how many people are doing good things on this planet. They're totally ignoring the politics of it. They don't care about that. Yeah, they need the funding and the money, but they're coming up with it other ways. And so, I really think there's a good side that we just don't hear about anymore. All we're hearing is the bad side, and that's the dark side, just trying to keep the people stirred up and getting, defeatist attitudes. I just don't think that's happening, at all. Not to the degree that's reported in the news.
Well, we always hear ignorance is bliss. That's actually knowledge is power, and it's always inverted, the other way around. And I think all governments are at war against their own population, and that's what we need to understand. It's like we shouldn't be at war, like you said, against other populations, other people. We should be at war against those who want us to go to war for them.
So. I don't think we should go to war at all with anybody. But if we had a military, and I believe we've got parts of the military that are the good guys who understand this stuff. But if we had let's say the enlisted people in the military, if they could see what's going on and refuse to obey stupid orders in mass, then those stupid orders would not go forward. But see, they're programmed to believe they have to follow the orders, or they'll get discommoded, or they'll get, disgraced or court-martialed or something like that. And then they'll be, ashamed to their family and their community and so on like that. Well, that's a lie. That's another lie. If they want to stand up to their own integrity and do what's right and not obey a really, really bad, crazy, destructive orders that are totally, insane, then we won't go to these wars, and we won't have these invasions of people who are just, nobody wants war except governments and corporations.
Precisely. And sometimes we have to listen to our little voice inside our heads, which is called intuition, that will help us, make judgments, good judgments, and discern in our lives. And I think that these are the little voices in our heads that we need to listen to.
Yeah, and the thing is, going into the streets and marching is not going to do any good at all. All that's going to do is feed the game even further so that they can clamp down on us even closer. So the way to battle this, if we're going to call it a battle, is to walk away from it and get with your neighbors and start your community, and it's not going to be an overnight thing. You'll have some hardships to go through, I suppose. Anytime you make a change in your lifestyle, there's bumps in the road. And so, get prepared for that. Be prepared for that. But look at the other side of it, to where there's freedom of thought, at least, if nothing else, which is really, really mighty important.
Right. Well, thank you, Sherry, for having given us food for thought and food for good thoughts, instead of the negative thoughts that you've taught us how to identify and wave off. And what's on your plate for the upcoming months? Do you have anything specific that you want to talk about?
Oh, gee, I don't really know. I just kind of take it as it goes. And so, I'm working on my farm, and actually I'm going to be starting to get ready for winter pretty soon, because that won't be but a few more months away. So,
right.
I don't really know. I've got some interviews lined up with other people that are not confirmed yet, and I'm busy on the Venus project. And so, and I'm busy, helping Jerry with his book. I'm really hoping we can get that finished in the next 6 or 8 months, so we can get it published. And because a lot of people are asking for it, and it's going to be really a good book, but we have to get it finished first.
I'd love to interview you with Jerry, along with Jerry sometime. And Jerry's welcome on the show.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you very much, Sherry, and Godspeed to you and to all your projects. And we hope to see you again soon. And actually, your method succeed on an individual scale and large, mass scale basis as well. That would be great.
I would love to hear success stories, and I'd love to publish them on my website, success stories, or on my blog. That would be wonderful, because the more success stories we have, the more success stories we will have. So I appreciate you putting me on your show, so I can, say this information and get it out. I hope that it's received well, and I really do appreciate being on your show.
I was deeply honored to have you on, and we'll put up your email on the screen for the listeners if they want to send you their success stories and experiences, and they're welcome to. And
they can go to my website, to the contact page, and contact me there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, keyholejourney.com.
That's
Thank you so much, Sherry. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Take care. Good night.